Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Okay, happy Friday everybody. People in China have just entered a new holiday period, first with the Mid-Autumn Festival, then with the National Day holidays. We begin today's video with updates in US-China relations, and there are several significant developments we need to cover. Let's begin with the positive news. US-based outlet The Wall Street Journal reports that in addition to a likely visit to the United States next month by top diplomat Wang Yi, Vice Premier and Xi Jinping's top economic policy aide He Lifeng may also visit, likely to help pave the way for a Xi Jinping visit to the US in November for APEC and a likely meeting with US President Biden. He Lifeng would be the most senior official to travel to the United States since President Biden took office. In the piece, The Wall Street Journal writes, quote, "Xi wants to show to the Chinese public that he has got China's most important bilateral relations under control, especially at a time of a deepening economic malaise, according to people close to Beijing." End quote. In particular, the outlet adds, the Chinese leader wants to see if restoring economic discussions with Washington may help slow down the pace of US restrictions on high technology transfers to China. This may be wishful thinking, however. Viewers may hear that it's just begun raining outside. I am in New Zealand currently, and it is winter. It's been wet the last few days. Meanwhile, US Secretary of State Blinken, in an interview this week, spoke on the question of Taiwan and his thoughts regarding tensions in the region, expressing, quote, "What we've seen over the last years, not just the last year, years, plural, really going back to 2016, is China looking to stir the pot, to change the status quo with regard to Taiwan. The stakes, not just for Taiwan, but quite literally for the entire world, are extraordinarily high. 50% of the world's container traffic goes through the Taiwan Strait every day. 70% of semiconductors are manufactured there. Were there to be a crisis over Taiwan, precipitated by Chinese actions, you would have a global economic crisis." End quote. The other region of geopolitical friction and concern is, of course, the South China Sea. We remember earlier this week we discussed the Philippines president ordering a special operation in which his Coast Guard removed a barrier installed by China at the entrance of the Scarborough Shoal, a chain of reefs and rocks which the Philippines and China both claim as their own. The operation, which angered Beijing, has raised renewed questions about whether and under what conditions would the US back the Philippines if the situation were to escalate. Quote, "Our mutual defense treaties would lose most, if not all, of their credibility if we stayed out of it. The US cannot leave the Philippines in the lurch." End quote. This week, during a congressional hearing with the House Subcommittee on Foreign Affairs, US Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for South and Southeast Asia commended the Philippines operation, telling lawmakers, quote, "The department has been incredibly clear that when it comes to our treaty commitments to the Philippines, we believe an armed attack against Philippine armed forces, public vessels, and aircraft apply to the South China Sea. That includes the Philippine Coast Guard. We stand by those commitments absolutely." End quote. There is one further development related to US-China relations which we need to cover too. Yesterday, Thursday, the US State Department's Global Engagement Center published a new report on Beijing's global information work, accusing China of trying to create a, quote, "community of digital authoritarians in a global propaganda effort as part of an undeclared information war." End quote. The report lays out how the US State Department believes that China tries to shape the global information environment, especially in relation to how the PRC is discussed in English, Chinese, and other languages. One commentator noted that every government wants to shape narratives, and some have more capacity to do so, but regardless, this report is useful to dive into what the PRC is doing, how it is doing it, and how organized and systematic it is. Let us briefly examine some of the report's salient points. Many of these points will be very familiar to regular viewers. Quote, "The PRC employs a variety of deceptive and coercive methods as it attempts to influence the international information environment. Beijing's information manipulation spans the use of propaganda, disinformation, and censorship. Unchecked, The PRC's efforts will reshape the global information landscape, creating biases and gaps that could even lead nations to make decisions that subordinate their economic and security interests to Beijing's. Beijing seeks to maximize the reach of biased or false pro-PRC content. It has acquired stakes in foreign media through public and non-public means and sponsored online influencers. Beijing has also secured sometimes restrictive content sharing agreements with local outlets that can result in trusted mastheads providing legitimacy to unlabeled or obscured PRC content. In addition, Beijing has also worked to co-opt prominent voices in the international information environment, such as foreign political elites and journalists. On issues it deems sensitive, the PRC has employed online and real-world intimidation to silence dissent and encourage self-censorship. The PRC has also taken measures against corporations in situations where they are perceived to have challenged its desired narratives on issues like Xinjiang. With democratic countries, Beijing has taken advantage of open societies to take legal action to suppress critical voices." End quote. It goes without saying, but China Update has not and will not engage in self-censorship. Next up, the Chinese economy, and if you're enjoying today's episode of China Update, don't forget to hit the like button. Liking, sharing and subscribing are all big helps. Only 50% of regular viewers are subscribed to the channel, and for anyone who wants to help keep China Update financially sustainable, Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. As always, thank you so much, everybody, for the ongoing support. Now, let's move through the economy-related developments. According to an official statement published yesterday, Thursday, China has appointed public finance specialist Lan Fuan as the Ministry of Finance's Communist Party Group Chief, replacing Liu Kun. Lan recently stepped down as Party Committee Chief of Shanxi Province and is now on track to also take over the position of Finance Minister from Liu. Quote, "Liu Kun is finally leaving his post as Minister of Finance. There was some surprise that he stayed on after the National People's Congress in March, but like Yi Gang at the People's Bank of China, it appears he was kept on to help with the new bureaucratic structures resulting from the party eating even more of the state reforms announced earlier this year. Lan has a lot of experience in provincial finance jobs, and his background should be useful in navigating the local debt minefields. I would not expect Lan to have the power to change policies. Rather, he may be an effective implementer." End quote. Indeed, UK-based The Financial Times, citing an unnamed person close to the ministry, writes today that Lan would have little leeway to design policy initiatives on his own, as decision-making has been centralized, with the source adding, quote, "All he could do is to listen to what his boss tells him and then implement." End quote. Next up for the economy, state-run China Eastern Airlines Corp announced yesterday, Thursday, that it has ordered 100 C919 single-aisle planes. The C919 is made by state-owned Commercial Aircraft Corp of China and is seen by some as a possible rival to current giants Airbus and Boeing, in the China market at least. Indeed, this $9.9 billion order deals a potential blow to Boeing, which hasn't had a large order from Chinese carriers, its largest market, in years, likely due to fallout from US-China tensions. According to Boeing, China will account for a fifth of the world's new aircraft deliveries over the next 20 years, at over 8,560 planes. The C919 made its first commercial flight in May. 5 C919 aircraft will be delivered to China Eastern in 2024, and then 10 a year from 2025 through 2027, rising to 15 in the following 3 years, and 20 in 2031. And finally for today's video, during Wednesday's Politburo study session, General Secretary Xi Jinping gave a speech about economic reform and opening up, including a commitment to meeting this year's growth rate of around 5%, raising some hopes that Beijing may be finally be finding the political motivations to shore up the economy. Wang Huiyao, founder of the Beijing-based Center for China and Globalization, expressed that the speech was the, quote, clearest assurance about the overarching task of economic development and will help assuage concerns arising from the previous emphasis on security and anti-espionage laws. End quote. A Beijing-based government policy advisor speaking to US-based outlet Bloomberg on the condition of anonymity said, quote, Xi's comments appear to reflect a growing sense of urgency to stimulate economic growth. The top leadership has this tradition of putting emphasis on certain matters by holding study sessions. From the tone, we can see that they are basically in favor of an outward-looking economy. End quote. We also note that Xi made the comments just days after an inspection of Yiwu of Zhejiang province, a major international trading hub. The city also has the best Turkish and Lebanese food in China, in the humble opinion of yours truly. These developments have re-sparked some market hopes that more sustainable stimulus may be on the way. Others, however, continue to counsel a degree of caution. Quote, whether it will be sustainable depends, of course, on the kind of stimulus. For years, the role of the economy was mainly to accommodate Beijing's political ambitions, both domestic and foreign. Now that these are becoming constrained by weakness in the economy, we are likely to see a lot more focus in the next year or two on reviving the economy. But contrary to what many analysts think, reviving the economy isn't a matter of more stimulus, or even of more opening up to the private sector and to foreigners. It requires a politically difficult restructuring of the underlying economy. End quote. And for the next few years, as that difficult restructuring is underway, we will be following very closely here on China Update. Okay, that is today's episode. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you all tomorrow.